And joining us now to discuss this cooperation between Poland and South Korea is Jacek Raubo, Director, Defence24 Analysis Unit. Good morning and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning, and again, thank you for the invitation for your program.
So now, can you tell us what are the key objectives of the visit of South Korea's defense minister to Poland, and how will it strengthen the bilateral ties between the two countries?
Surely both sides are focusing on the three or even four factors when we think about their bilateral cooperation. First is, of course, this layer you underlined before. This is the modernization programs and also cooperation between the various military production firms from both sides. On the other hand, we have three different and other things. First is coming from the South Korean, Republic of Korea, perspective on Europe as a market, as a very visible and very vital market for their own industry. Of course, we are right now focusing on the military aspect, but on the other hand, we know that very well from the past and from the present situation that South Koreans are really active in very new and modern technologies, counter some regional threats, and also they are spreading their presence around the world, not only in Europe but also in the Middle East and of course in Indo-Pacific. So this is the second layer. The third layer is of course something which is really existing right now. There is a connection between transatlantic area and Indo-Pacific security area. Why? First of all, of course, we see Russia, China, and North Korea policy toward this scrutiny over democracy, stabilization around the world. So this is the first thing. The second thing is, of course, that Japan, Republic of Korea are trying to build more bridges between, of course, NATO and their regional cooperation platforms. So this is the third layer. And the fourth layer is, of course, that we need to focus on the common ground when we think about the future reality and the future challenges we will deal with, of course. So I think it's a very optimistic that right now Republic of Korea is a really active player, not only when we think about what we see on this material military platforms, but more largely when we think about the political agenda toward the common ground of our own defense and security issues.
So it might be also the beginning of a long-term partnership. Now, I would love to perhaps shift our focus to the technology transfer as such. As one of the most critical aspects of the Polish and South Korean cooperation is the emphasis on technology transfer. And by incorporating Polish technology and components into the K2 and K9 systems, I feel like Poland is set to gain substantial know-how in advanced military manufacturing. So, to your mind, how will the technological transfer from South Korea now enhance Poland's defense capabilities in long term?
Mostly we need to highlight it before we start some discussion about the specific aspects, that this kind of technology sharing with the Republic of Korea is a necessary aspect when we think about the large and long-term programs, because we need to see this cooperation not only as a black-white situation. Of course, Republic of Korea is right now one of the global leaders in producing, for instance, some armaments and mostly heavy equipment. They have this capacity to produce more, to produce in large scale because of their allocation, of their programming of their armaments. On the other hand, we need to still see that we are living in Europe, and we need to see our own regional security aspects and dilemmas, like cooperation with France, like cooperation with other European partners, also on this military technology field. So when we build this kind of introduction. We are focusing right now on two important platforms. First is, of course, main battle tank, this famous tank coming from Republic of Korea, which will be the second core of our heavy units, of course, alongside Abrams tanks, and we need to share that with our firms. I think this is not something special, because when we think about India policy, when we think even about US policy toward cooperation with other partners, there is always this pressure to build something, to have this technology sharing with on our own soil with our own partners. So I see and I hope there will be a large sharing with the new technologies, with PGZ, with, for instance, Poznań compounds of PGZ, Polish leader of military armaments, and I think it is I think it's still existing in our minds that we need to have a kind of a bypasses, because first of all we need to do what we want to do right now. On the other hand, we need to build some long-term cooperation. We need to learn something from, for instance, Koreans, but also from other partners from NATO and other regions. So I think the K9 is much more complex, because with K9, with howitzers, we are dealing with larger dilemmas, because there is also crab production on the Polish soil with Polish firms. So I think this is a big challenge for Polish government, for Polish firms, for Polish military industry, to balance our own interests, our own policy toward, so I mentioned before, Polish howitzers and K9 implementation Polish units. Why it is so obvious that we need to have this balance? First of all, because we need to strengthen our own capabilities very fast. We know what is going on with Russia. We know what is going on with our Ukrainian partner, defense against Russian aggression. So we need to have right now, right here. And then, as I mentioned before, Koreans are providing larger capabilities, capacity, for building numbers of this. So quality and quantity. On the other hand, we need to have a long-term modernization program. So we need to invest in our own production platforms. So I think it's a big challenge. There is no black and white picture, and I hope Republic of Korea is a great partner to cooperate with, and they understand this a very complex situation, which is not only based on bilateral relation, but also based on some more sophisticated cooperation of Poland with the partners in Europe and in transatlantic area.
Now, what about, I'd like to go back to the point that you just made earlier, that that South Koreans are spreading their influence around the world, that they see also Europe as a market. And now, how important is it that they do that? And how important are alliances with countries like Poland, which of course belong to the Western-led world order, especially in light of what we've seen recently happen with Putin going to Pyongyang?
You mentioned two layers. First is, of course, the political layer, and this is much better to start with that. When we see Pyongyang policy toward Korean Peninsula or a whole region, we understand that this is also a threat against our stabilization here, because they share the munition with Russia, they cooperate strictly with Russia, they can, of course, interfere with inside the Indo-Pacific security and reinforce U.S. forces from also EUCOM area of responsibility to Indo-PACOM. But on the other hand, I think the second layer is much more interesting. When we think about South Korea as a partner, as a very sophisticated partner for military armaments and this arms race around the world, they have a very complex policy toward, for instance, instance, Middle East. They are democratic state. So this is a very important statement before we understand all the, for instance, money and technology aspects. So they cooperate with partners inside Middle East. They get some lessons learned from there. So they are also treat Poland and Romania as a gate to other European states. And that's why some other European states are not appreciate with such a large cooperation with Republic of Korea. As I mentioned before, there's no black and white. There's a lot of gray inside this policy. But when we think about values, when we think about common ground of definitions, about the policy, about global threats, we see more space to cooperate with Republic of Korea. On the other hand, when we talk about technology, money, and of course this industrial cooperation, we are coming on the more difficulties and with more difficulties on the ground, which is much more complex than the political core of relations.
Exactly, and now I really hope that over time now Poland will be able to develop also and produce next level generation military platforms domestically, and perhaps now this is yet another chapter to that story. Jacek Raubo, thank you so much for joining us and providing your expert insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the invitation again.